Welcome into our Backyard Brothers podcast. I am, as you can tell, a little bit under the weather as far as a head cold here, but otherwise, I think we're all intact. And we have a guest with us. So we'll let Bob introduce himself here in a second, but today we're going to be covering MLB baseball preview. We're going to be looking at some of the teams, some of the new rule changes, format changes, and just an overall preview of what the season might look like. And we've invited Bob to join us. Uh, and go ahead, Bob, and let us know what your background with baseball is, and some of those things like that.
Absolutely. So, morning all. Bob Taylor. I think Cody may know me a little bit better than Scott and Dustin do, but yeah, I'm a lifelong baseball fan. I come by it honestly. My grandfather and my father were both New York Giants fans growing up, even though they lived in Brooklyn at the time. Um, and so I definitely inherited a National League bias. My favorite player growing up, I kind of got away from the Giants a little bit. I was a Braves fan, and in particular, I was a Henry Aaron fan. And so, I can remember, writing letters to him when he was chasing Babe Ruth, and actually got one back, which is, it's in the small packet of things that I'm going to grab if the house ever catches fire. Um, but yeah, I've been a baseball fan for years. Currently, mainly because of where I'm located, Washington Nationals fan, which is painful to say because the Nationals, sneak preview of what we're going to talk about. The Nationals are not going to be, much in the discussion this year. But yeah, and we're chatting about memories, and one of the things that really stands out to me, when I had just moved to the back to the East Coast, I guess context matters a little bit. 1994 season was ongoing, and Tony Gwynn was flirting with 400, and the Braves were an absolute steamroller, and the owners were trying to get a salary cap in place. So August of '94, the players go on strike and lost the rest of the season, lost the playoffs, and didn't get everything resolved until I think March of the following year, and they even missed a few games at the beginning of the '95 season. So '95 baseball is kind of running uphill. Fans were not pleased, and the one thing that they really had going for them at that time was the fact that Cal Ripken was coming down to the point where he was about to break Lou Gehrig's consecutive game record that had stood for 55 or 60 years, whatever it was. And so that was ongoing, and it really captured the interest of people. And so early September, they're playing in Camden Yards, so in front of the home fans, and 21:30, the day that he ties Lou Gehrig, boom, home run, and the crowd goes wild, and the banner drops in right field, and everybody's excited. And then the next day, the day to break the record, yeah, I mean, President Clinton was in the broadcast booth, and everything is just set up, and you cannot script this any better. Again, Cal goes yard, and the crowd's going nuts, and the game becomes official after the fifth inning is completed, and as soon as the game is is official. Just like everything stopped. His teammates shoved Cal out on the field, and it was like a 20-minute standing ovation. They could not get the game going again. And Cal ended up doing a lap, just around the entire, Camden Yards, shaking hands, waving to people. The whole time, the network does not break for commercial. The announcers are quiet, and it's just crowd and Cal. And it was one of the most intense fan moments. I was alone in the living room just watching this, and just it was overwhelming. It was one of my favorite fan moments ever. And yeah, I was, 'cause I was also a big Cal Ripken fan. Loved the way he played the game and went out and approached it day in, day out. And watching that streak go down was amazing. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. And in in the analog of records that are unbreakable, you've got to think about that. I mean, I think it's I'm doing my research here. 2,632 consecutive games, right? Uh,
500 games beyond where Gehrig was. So
yeah, that's insane. You'd have to play every game of every season for more than 16 seasons in order to hit that. And I just don't think that's ever going to be broken. I mean, especially in this day and age where we have some uh, especially in the NBA. I'm not positive about MLB, but a lot of players take days off between games, and that seems a little bit more of a culture thing to take care of your body a little bit more than maybe they did back then. But I just don't ever see that record ever being even met again.
well, and buried in all of that, that nobody talks about or doesn't talk about very often, there's a consecutive innings streak
Yeah,
that goes over like 6,000. So that's insane. So yeah, that was untouchable.
Yeah, I
Dustin,
was
Cody, thoughts?
just real, I guess one quick question to follow up on that as well as a pointer. I was gonna say, like, along with how unbreakable it is, um, Lou Gehrig is still number 2 on there. From last I looked at it. And so no one's gotten close to beating Lou Gehrig again, let alone Cal Ripken. And so it's and I mean, Lou Gehrig's was considered unbreakable, I believe. And Cal Ripken came in and knocked it out of the ballpark, pun intended. And anyway, so I was thinking of that. I just kind of wanted to get maybe a better understanding. Was that like the moment that cemented you as a baseball fan, or was that like years before?
That was one of the moments actually that kind of saved me as a baseball fan. It didn't start me because when I was a kid and Hank Aaron was chasing Babe Ruth, the New York Times would put a little baseball in the sports section with the home run number every time he hit a home run. I would cut those out and put them in my scrapbook. So I was a baseball fan long before, but it goes back to what I was saying about the context, though. Baseball was having a real PR issue after that strike. And I think the number in and of itself is really impressive, but what it did for the game to bring people like me back into it again after all of the sourness of the strike, it's a big deal to miss playoffs and to miss the World Series, your feature attraction. And to have that canceled in 94 was just brutal. So, to give baseball, a leg back up, in all of that was, I mean, it was huge for the game. You know, the number's impressive, but it was huge for the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that strike is something that goes down in sports history across multiple different sports. I mean, that strike is essentially what sent Michael Jordan back to the NBA. At the same time, it's interesting across different sports and across the whole country. It had a huge effect.
There were a lot of work stoppage issues across multiple sports at that point, and yeah, it was it was a tough time. So, thank you, Cal. It was amazing.
Yeah. I won't take very long on this, but so I'm not the biggest fan of watching baseball on TV, right? No, I love going to games and things like that, but when I'm a former journalist, a sports writer, for about, I guess, 6, 7, 8 years in college in the first little part of my career, and I took an internship that it was unpaid internship, but it didn't matter because it was the best thing I could have possibly done. I won an internship in New York City writing for a baseball team out there. And it was actually you mentioned being an NL fan in New York. I wrote for the Single A short season league affiliate of the New York Mets. And they're called the Brooklyn Cyclones, right down there on Coney Island. And being able to get into that industry and talk to these up and coming players, one of which I'll talk about because he's a big deal now. Now plays for the Red Sox. His name is Justin Turner. He was on that team, and talking with him, and he still had that beard, that red beard at that time too. And so he was the big attraction, and everyone knew at that point, watching what he could do for that team, he was going to play in the big leagues, and it didn't take very long for him to get there.
Yeah. So, no, and in fact, he's, he was one of the, maybe not at the upper level of the off-season moves, but he was a key move, both in his coming to Boston, but also in his leaving LA.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have a trickle down effect. But yeah, he's fun to watch. He's another one who, he has a sense of fun, but he's a good gritty, good team guy, good clubhouse guy. I mean, Boston's going to have another rough year, but that's a good pickup.
Yeah. Great. Any thoughts from anyone else before we move on to talking about these teams? Kind of the meat of our meeting. Okay. Well, let's do it in order of divisions. And again, we don't have to spend a lot of time on any team, on any one team, on any one division. But if you have a thought to share about a specific team or a specific division, please speak up, because we will move through these fairly quickly. But let's just start with the AL East.
Okay, starting right at the top then, because that is hands down,
right.
That is the roughest division. What blew my mind about the AL East last year, not just the fact that 3 of the teams went to the postseason, 4 of the teams finished over 500, and if Boston had somehow managed to pick up 3 more wins, every team in that division would have been 500 or better. So, even with Boston having a down year for them, it's just it's the roughest division. I think looking at it, for me, I don't see that there's going to be a whole lot of shifting around. I think the Yankees are still the class of the division. Signing Judge back was huge for them. Signing Rizzo back, I think, was important for the team, for the chemistry. They added Carlos Rodon to the rotation. They needed a left-handed starter. He's a good one. They've got Nestor, nasty Nestor Cortez. They've got, they've got a really, really good lineup. They have maybe a question mark at shortstop. I don't know who they're necessarily going to start with. It'll either be a prospect or it'll be somebody like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who, is a good utility player, good platoon player, maybe not, your everyday guy. But, at that point, you're quibbling about details. I still think the Yankees are the team to beat. Toronto, Tampa Bay are the other two teams that went to the playoffs. They're still going to be strong this year. Baltimore, young team coming up. I love the Adley Rutschman, the catcher. I think he's a good spark plug guy for them. I don't know if they're going to be. They could very easily be in the hunt for a wild card spot. They only missed it by 7 games last year. Their pitching, pitching's not great. They need to get John Means back, but it's still going to be, I think, the hardest division in baseball. One thing, and it probably a good place to kind of mention this now, it is going to be a little bit different this year because you're not going to have, the schedule doesn't have the same divisional focus that it did last year. There's going to be a more balanced schedule. So, you're not going to have, the Yankees and Toronto and Tampa Bay beating up on each other for, a third of the season. It's going to get spread out, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, I Yankees still the class of it. Toronto, Tampa Bay toss up for second and third. But it's definitely going to be a fun division to watch.
Yeah, some of the things I was looking at. You mentioned the Blue Jays. They are probably one of the funnest teams to watch, just because they have such power hitters that knock it out of the park every time. George Springer, and they added a couple of guys as well, Brandon Belt and Kiermacher. That still have some power in them. And I'm trying to think of the other guy.
They've got Bichette, Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. at the top
That's
of the
the one, Guerrero. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, Vlad had an unbelievable season 2 years ago. He took a little bit of a step back last year. He was still tough, but he was he was fighting for a triple crown, and 2 years ago. So if he stays anywhere close to that level, he's about as dangerous as they come. They added Chris Bassett for to get some pitching depth. I think that's going to help. I think maybe by virtue of having done a little bit more in the offseason, maybe they keep their advantage over Tampa Bay. So yeah, that's it. That is definitely a good team, and they will make the Yankees uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah. Two last things I wanted to mention before tossing it over to Dustin and Cody for any thoughts. I agree with you, first of all, that New York is still going to be far and away. I don't know far and away, but they're definitely the best team in that division. Aaron Judge is probably the best player in baseball. And I was something I want to say about
Shohei Ohtani.
What was that? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we'll get to the Angels as well. Sure. But Tampa Bay, they amaze me. They're a team with one of the smallest payrolls in baseball, but they've made it to the playoffs in 5 straight seasons. It's just the fact that they can be so good while being outspended by so much is just a huge testament to the GM, the team building, the coaching there, that they can still get there 5 years in a row like that.
And they've got a couple of, Wander Franco, if he stays healthy, is going to be a great player. He's, going to do a lot of the same things probably that Randy Arozarena can do. Randy Arozarena had a great, I think, World Baseball Classic. So he, he's in the lineup. They're right there at the top of the order. So, yeah, there is no reason to think that they're not going to be, in the mix. Definitely for a playoff spot, if not the division.
Yeah, great. Dustin, Cody, any thoughts about these 5 teams or the AL East?
I just have a question about the Yankees, and that kind of relates to another question I had. Is Yankee Stadium is one of the stadiums that's the easiest to hit a home run in. It is short. It's easier. I mean, you can even look at Fenway with the Green Monster. If you get high enough, it's easier to hit a home run. Just the footage to the wall is shorter than majority of every other stadium, and just kind of get your thoughts on the fairness of that versus other teams and their stadiums that they're normally going to play in.
To me, actually, the quirks of the different fields add to the fun of the whole thing. One of my big regrets in life is that I never got to see a game at the Polo Grounds, where they had like a 483-foot, center field. I think it's fun. I love it when teams kind of design different features into the stadiums. Baseball went through a period in the 70s where so many of the stadiums looked the same. Riverfront Stadium looked like, Three Rivers looked like, they were all cookie cutter. And to have some, to have some uniqueness to each stadium is it's part of the game. You mentioned the Green Monster. Can you imagine playing baseball in Boston without having, the monster in left field to shoot for? And I think, if teams are able to, build their lineups to take advantage of certain features that they have, if you have a big outfield and you go after maybe the better defensive outfielders so that you can cover that ground, more power to you. I love it. And I don't think, to me, it's not anything that, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't create an unfair advantage because, you're in a game, you've got hitters who can reach that short right field, but so does the other team. They have the same shot at the same quirks that you do. So, I love it. I love that kind of stuff.
Good, cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Sure.
Just one small thing before we move on, since we have a lot to cover. Is I just want to talk about Yankees and Aaron Judge just real quick. That Aaron Judge is that player who I'm not even sure how long he's been in the league or not, but he seems like that player who's already going to be a Hall of Famer, and so. He's really good, and he makes the Yankees that team the team to beat. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next division.
Yeah. So, if we're staying in the AL and going to the Central, is that the?
Yeah, let's go to the Central, which is opposite, right? This is a division where there's one clear favorite and 4 bottom feeders.
Yeah, although I do see one team that maybe can give Cleveland a run. Cleveland was the division winner last year. They're the only team from that division to make the playoffs. They are going to be good. I expect them to win the division again. You know, Jose Ramirez is criminally underrated and criminally underpaid. They added a few pieces. They settled down their first base slot. They got Josh Bell, who had a good year last year. Hopefully, he can get rid of some of his inconsistencies, but I think the big competition is going to come from Minnesota. For them, getting Carlos Correa back was huge. They've got a good lineup. If Joey Gallo bounces back, that could be a huge piece for them. They need to keep Byron Buxton healthy. He's awesome when he's on the field, but he's not on the field enough. So, but Minnesota is a team that could push Cleveland. I think the White Sox finished second, but they had their offseason was not anything to speak of. I see them potentially taking a step back this year. They're changing managers, which is going to be interesting. Tony La Russa was there last year, and I don't know that he necessarily meshed very well with, that lineup. So we'll see what happens with the changes there. Yeah. Detroit and Kansas City, maybe a slight step forward, but nobody's going to be competing for anything this year.
Yeah, I'm a little proud of my research here because I had written down something similar that you said. I said, I'll read exactly what I wrote down. The Twins could be that team that sneaks up on a lot of wild card hopefuls and stays around for a lot of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking the same thing as I was looking at what they had, and I picked them to finish second in their division as well. And so yeah, I like what the Twins have, and I just think that the Guardians could sleepwalk their way to that division championship, but it's just about what they do after that, right? So.
Yeah, they've got some good solid players. They're a fairly young team. It's just they. Obviously, they're not in a position to do a lot of the big spending that other teams in other markets can do. So they're a little bit limited. They were so lucky to get, they signed Ramirez last year to a contract. I think it was like a 5-year contract for about $125 million. And when you see all of these, if it wasn't for that, if he was going to be a free agent, either coming into this season or going into next season, he would be on that list of $300 million free agents that that are out there now. No question. He's a machine. He's an RBI machine, and he's a character. So he's fun to watch, but Cleveland, I think, definitely wins the division. But Minnesota makes it very, very interesting for them.
Yeah.
I just have one quick thought, and then Dustin can take over and we can move on. But in my limited knowledge, I think it's the Royals year. So I think it's KC that will be the one taking it. So, but that's my thoughts. Dustin?
I have no follow-up questions. Go Twins.
The year that the Royals won the World Series was one of those years I got into that postseason. I was watching and recording every single game, and so I have some Royals memorabilia because I got it. They're probably the team I cheer for whatever reason. I have whether or not it sounds good because I have a trash can that's a Royals embroidered and everything on it. Maybe that's because they play like trash now, but they were good then. So
So yeah, Cody, all due respect, I don't think so. Don't the mortgage should not go on Kansas City. Just FYI.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to the AL West. A little bit more exciting division here.
AL West. Houston was a 100-game winner last year. Lost a couple of key pieces. Verlander went to New York. But they did they got Jose Abreu to play first. The lineup is still killer. And they extended the contract for Christian Javier, who was just a lights out pitcher for them in the playoffs last year. The shortstop, Jeremy Pena, was the ALCS and World Series MVP. That doesn't happen often. Houston is still, the class of that division. Seattle pushed them at the end of last year. We'll push them again. The Angels always look good on paper at the beginning of the season. And it's especially after the World Baseball Classic, it's going to be fun to watch, Ohtani and Trout on the same team, instead of having Ohtani striking Trout out with, to end the game. But they, I still wonder about their pitching. They did get Tyler Anderson from the Dodgers, but is it enough? Anthony Rendon can't stay on the field. That's a kind of a big contract that's eating up a lot of flexibility for them right now. I would love to see them do it. I would love to see Trout in the postseason, and actually, if we're talking best player, if I can't have, Aaron Judge, I'm not shedding any tears if I have Mike Trout playing center field. Trust me.
Yeah, that's. I had written down here that the Angels have two of probably the best 5 players in baseball on their team, but they have no one else. They just have those two. So.
And it's criminal that they have not been able to get those two into the playoffs. So, I'm hoping that this is the year. Seattle, they have to leapfrog probably Seattle, and I'm not sure that's going to happen because I don't see, the AL West was the team that got the other two. It got the other one wild card slot last year. And Seattle got that. There aren't going to be any wild card slots up for grabs. AL East is going to have a lock probably on 2 of them. I don't see it happening in the Central. So the Angels would have to leapfrog at least Seattle. I don't necessarily see that happening. The other team that looks really interesting in that division is Texas. They added Jake DeGrom, and they brought him in to go with, they got Marcus Semien and Corey Seager last year. So, they're building on some really good pieces. They got Nathan Eovaldi from Boston. They got Andrew Haney from the Dodgers. So their pitching is considerably stronger. They already had Martin Perez. That's a team that could sneak up on a lot of people. And I'm really curious. The key for them, like it was for the Mets the last couple of years, DeGrom has to stay healthy. And he has to be able to pitch every 5th day. And if he's not there at the top of the order and everybody else has to shift up to cover, that's tough. But yeah, he's got to stay healthy. No point in talking about Oakland. They're not going anywhere.
I was going to say, and then there's Oakland, who lost 100 games last year. So
Yeah,
Uh,
and still weren't the worst team in the majors, but so,
we have a little over a minute left in this one, then we'll jump back on. But I just wanted to say I don't think expectations have been this high in Seattle since Ken Griffey Jr. was there. Right, this is the year
yeah.
that Seattle's really high about what they can do this year. So
Yeah, I mean, Julio Rodriguez is, he's a superstar. They got some power, Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield. They got Colton Wong, who is solid in the infield. They definitely got better. I don't know if they're quite good enough yet to leapfrog Houston, but Seattle will definitely be a player for at least for a wild card, if not the division.
okay, well let's end this one here, and then we'll jump right back on in a minute or two.
Sure.
And we got through half of them, so that's a good place to do it.
So sounds like a plan.
Okay, see you in a few seconds.
All righty.